Okay, so one of the big questions is, when does school start? So we know that it does start Monday, October 19th. That starts our second 6 weeks grading cycle for HISD. And parents have made a selection to either remain virtual for the next 6 weeks or to send their children back face to face. And so those decisions have been made up until December 4th, when the parents will then have an opportunity to change their decision or continue on with either face-to-face or virtual. School hours are the same for elementary. It's 7. Okay, so the hours for elementary schools in HISD begin at 7:30 a.m. and end at 3 p.m. And for the secondary, they begin at 8:30 a.m. and end at 4 p.m. So it's the same right now for our virtual scholars as it will be face-to-face and for the remainder of the year.
Helping? So students can still work. Okay, but they would have the specifics and the I could get your information and have them call the elementary school begins their school as 8:30. But they should work those. And then we're seeing activities, but I could have someone to give them a call. Oh, no, ma'am, this is, you can call the.
Of course, that's probably the most common question that we get. What happens when we do have a possible positive case or an actual positive case? Those are reported to first the school nurse, and the school nurse then reports to the HISD health services. They go through some screening to just kind of gauge, is it a actual positive or is it an exposure? And based on the protocols put in the CDP plan, the school may or may not require full closure. It might require closure of a section of the building. And usually the deep cleaning crews are deployed to the campuses within a day or two. Most of the shutdowns are taking 3 to 5 days so that we can ensure that everything is deep cleaned and sanitized for a safe return. Individuals who have come in contact with possible people, the district is doing contact tracing. So we're really, really mindful of who enters our building. We keep our kids in designated areas, our staff in designated areas, so that we try to minimize transitions throughout the building so that we minimize transfer or spread. So depending on where the individual that has the suspected positive has been throughout the building, we will notify possible people who have been exposed or areas that could possibly be contaminated. Parents would be notified of the closure. If it is a closure, the students then will just flip back to virtual. So one of the big things is that the students maintain the district-issued device so that if we have to close down, we can switch right back to virtual learning and we don't lose any instructional time for our kids while we're remaining safe. Our district has done a phenomenal job of being very, very proactive, following CDC guidelines. They are watching the trends that are the districts that opened face-to-face before. Dr. Lathan and our cabinet are in constant communication with health departments so that we're able to adjust based on what is safest for our students, our staff, and our communities. So if you look at the protocols that have been in place in other districts, of course, us being one of the last ones to open up face-to-face, we are able to learn from other people's trials prior to. So we're really, really focused on safety and health of our staff and students. And so we're just updating our CDP regularly to ensure that campuses are informed, parents are informed, and that we're all adhering to guidelines set forth by the CDC.
So the school should receive
Okay, so HISD has gone across the board for all levels with the dress code. We are not enforcing the dress code. Of course, we would encourage if parents already have, because we do know that a lot of times parents buy uniforms, especially for the younger kids, and they can wear them for a year or two. So we would encourage, but we are not enforcing. No child will be reprimanded, sent home for not being in uniform. What we do ask that whether they're virtual or face-to-face, that they are in school-appropriate clothing. And that is just an expectation across the board. We don't want kids sitting in pajamas on camera. We would like them just to put on clothes, but it does not have to be a school uniform by any means. What's really important to us is that we're getting instruction to our kids.
Is your student in special education? Oh, okay, so then they wouldn't qualify. So
Absolutely. Most of our campuses have a wraparound. Most of our campuses have a wraparound specialist, and so many of the campuses have set up uniform closets. So if a parent just is needing clothes for their student, most campuses do have a plethora of uniforms that are either gently used and washed, or most of them are brand new donated. So they can always contact the campus directly and speak with the principal or the wraparound specialist, because whatever our children need, we're going to do our best to ensure that that's not a barrier to their education.
So for withdrawal, you would just go to the school, meet with the campus, they call it the CERT.
Yes. If you go to HISD.org/reopening, there's some information on there as well. Okay. So they'll wear a mask, but they don't have a mask.
Oh, awesome. Okay, good.
But is your student going to middle school? Are they riding the bus, or will they be dropped off? Okay. Yeah. So a lot of that's around transportation and those kind of things to maintain safety.
Okay.
There will be lunch provided should they choose to eat. It'll be in the classroom. But if you want to send them lunch, it's still going to be a hot meal. It's going to be a hot meal. Yeah. But those are going to be pre-packaged, pre-served, after the served to student.
Absolutely. So even pre-COVID, HISD has a parent concern line, and so if they don't feel comfortable contacting the school directly to ask these questions, they can always call the parent center with HISD, where that information is gathered. They'll answer what questions they can directly, and then they field them to the appropriate person to get the answer to the question directly. What I can say is that the preventative cleaning measures on campuses are that high contact surface areas are getting wiped down hourly. So we're talking about countertops, door handles, restrooms. None of the water fountains are working in the schools. Children will be provided with a bottle of water because we know that that's a highly transferable area, would be a water fountain. So those have either been completely turned off and usually bagged and taped off. Then if there's a suspected case, like I mentioned earlier, is that they would close a portion of the campus if needed, and then the facility services department deploys out a specialized crew that does deep cleaning in areas that are needed. Campuses also have a couple of additional custodial staffs just to maintain the daily cleaning.
So I have all the high school. Oh no, I'm not. I'm nowhere near that. I'm nowhere near that strong or courageous. So. Oh, really?
Yes,
I'm an SSO. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We do want our special needs students on campus as best to the family's ability, but we do know that we're going to honor whatever a parent's request is. So, Ms. Lewis, if you were to send your kids back this week and you just didn't feel really well about them being back in the building, or some change of circumstances happened and you want to change, absolutely, you could switch back by just notifying the campus, and you could switch them back to virtual with no issues at all.
No, actually talking in Austin and Ralph ISD. Yeah, so, and then I became
and where's your student in school?
Sterling.
Okay, well, what school is
And then
it?
at Walter for 3 years prior to becoming an SSO.
Mandarin? Oh, okay. I'm the school support officer for Mandarin.
was gonna say. That's awesome. Yeah, because I know that Mr. Williams.
So right now, based on the number of students that requested face-to-face and also honoring those CDC guidelines for the bus services, they have had to minimize some of the routes. There can only be one student per seat, and they sit by the window, and then the buses then can only carry about a third of their regular load. So with that being kept in mind, the district is working out plans, but right now they're going to start with our homeless, at-risk, and special needs students, and they have already started to add additional routes as we're able to safely transport kids, because again, the main thing is safety and a healthy well-being.
All right, good stuff. So Rhonda Harrison Benjamin is writing, and she's saying, will students and teachers be informed if a student contracts COVID-19 so they can stay home and quarantine? How will the quarantining process work? We talked a little bit about this at the top, but if you don't mind going over it again.
Sure. So yes, if it is somewhere that there's been a potential contact. So if there, some of our campuses are really, really large, and kids are not transitioning throughout the building to where they may have even had a potential exposure. We want to remember that potential exposure is being within 6 feet of someone for more than 15 minutes, and that puts you at a higher risk. So you wouldn't notify necessarily the whole campus if it doesn't impact the whole campus. The district is going to notify via a call out to the parties that have potential risks. But if a child who tested positive moves throughout the campus, then of course all of those people that have that contact with the student, there would be a notice being made to them. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis, but absolutely there would be notification to any families that have a potential exposure to their child or their family member.
All right. I am looking for some more questions here now. Let's see. By the way, I'll put up the number here in a moment.
Another big question.
Go ahead, Principal.
Okay, so another big question parents have is they're talking about attendance. And so this year attendance was a little bit different because we do have virtual and face-to-face. Of course, if a student is face-to-face, it goes back to the traditional, they're there, they're counted present. But when they're virtual, we understand that parents are juggling work, having kids at home, and doing virtual learning. So sometimes kids are not able to log in directly to their teacher's live lessons, but if they are able to submit an assignment to the hub before 11:59 p.m., that's another way that a student can be counted present. So I know parents have asked, well, what happens in my work schedule? I'm not there to assist my child logging into a live lesson. That's okay. Of course, we want them in the live lessons because that's when the teachers are teaching directly and able to interact and engage with students. But if that doesn't work, if a student is doing their work independently on the hub and submitting assignments, they're also credited with attendance for that day.
Okay. So here comes a long question. So this comes from Jacqueline.
All right.
Jacqueline, what kind of PPE gear will HISD provide teachers, students, and staff?
Oh, I lost you, Keith.
Oh, you can't hear me now?
Can you repeat the question? It cut off.
Can you hear me now, though?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. So Jacqueline is asking,
Yes, I can.
and I'll break this up into a couple of parts here. The first is, what kind of PPE gear will HISD provide teachers, students, staff, and where will they be directed to get tested during the outbreak? So that's two things there. So let's start those two. First one is, what kind of PPE gear will the teachers be provided?
Meagan, are you finished with the question? We're gonna
Every student, staff member will be issued a mask daily. In addition to that, teachers have been given a face shield that they may wear with their mask. They may not wear it in lieu of their mask. We have gowns available if teachers feel like they're more comfortable wearing a gown. Of course, there's gloves provided to every classroom along with disinfectant wipes. Those are issued on a weekly basis. Students will be required to wear their mask at all times, except for, of course, when they're eating or if they're outside at a recess or a PE course. But yes, the district will provide daily PPE for all students and staff members.
Okay. How about this one? This is
we have Dr. Lathan here.
Oh,
So
Dr. Lathan's in here. Oh, okay, great.
Dr. Lathan is here, so let's switch out and let y'all hear from Dr. Lathan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Lathan. How are you this morning, ma'am?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
Oh, we're fine, thanks. We're actually getting a lot of good questions here for you this morning. I asked the same of Principal Edwards earlier, and I know I'm sure you are excited about Monday, but I'll ask you, how are you feeling about Monday?
I'm extremely excited about Monday. Also, just a little nervous. We are in the middle of a pandemic, so being very cautious as we bring staff and students back, but very excited about the return of face-to-face instruction on Monday, October 19th.
Yes. So I just.
Dr. Lathan, here I am. I'm back with you here. I was kidding around with you. I was saying, hey, we got some big questions for you for the top breadwinner in the district. Now these are good questions that we're getting from viewers. I just like to. I don't get to be on TV or on the live stream much, so when I can, I have to try to play my comedic act. Okay, so one of the questions was about taking temperatures. I think Jacqueline, it was another question Jacqueline had about when this happens, where it will happen, when it will happen.
As students enter into the school, their temperatures will be taken and then they will be directed to their classroom.
Simple as that. Sounds good. How about this? Will students and teachers be informed if someone contracts COVID-19? I think we may have answered this already, but it's a popular question.
Yes, students and staff will be contacted. Of course, we will not identify the staff member nor the student that has tested positive for COVID, but that campus will be notified.
Okay. Let's see, another question here. During the outbreak, I'm reading this question in cold, let me make sure we're okay. During an outbreak, will HISD require those students to school provide a negative test? So when they're ready to come back to school, do they need to provide a negative test?
No, all students will be directed to quarantine for 14 days. At the end of 14 days, they'll be able to return. If they produce a negative doctor's note prior to the 14 days, then they can return.
So you have a mask, so that'd be great if they don't have it.
Okay, here's the next one for you. Is HISD cleaning and disinfecting classrooms between classes, since children will be switching classrooms as they attend one period class to the next?
We will be cleaning. We have additional staff to clean our facilities and to include cleaning bathrooms and classrooms.
Okay, very good. And here's and why was the requirement changed from 9 students per classroom to 22?
Well, it's not necessarily 22. Everything, class size will be contingent upon the number of students that are elected to return to face-to-face instruction. We are still adhering to at least 6 feet physical distancing. There are a couple of scenarios where it's 4 to 6 feet based on the size of the classroom, but the class size depends on the number of students that are elected to return back.
Okay. So we've got another question here from Pearl Prince. My child is getting All right, my next question, sorry, is my child is getting behind being online. He needs hands-on. What do you suggest since I am not comfortable with in-school? It's a complicated question. I'm sure there's not one easy answer there, but good question from Ms. Prince.
Thank you for Ms. Prince for the question. I would say contact your child's school, contact the teacher first to share the concerns. We are providing options for virtual tutoring, and so that's what we'll be able to provide. I'm hoping that Ms. Prince will feel comfortable at some point with sending her child back to face-to-face instruction.
Okay. So Paula Starnes is asking, will every child have soap available in restrooms and the classroom? Will they have sanitizer, spray, and hand gel? Will the schools, so we've already answered that one. So will they have access to soap and to gel, and where would they find these things?
Yes, students will have access to soap in the bathrooms. In the classrooms, we have hand sanitizer dispensers, and also teachers have additional supplies. But students will have access to hand sanitizers and also soap in the restrooms.
Okay, so we've got, tell me, Dr. Lathan, what have you learned from other school districts? Have there been some lessons that are being shared from other districts, tips? Is there a conversation going on?
Yes, our colleagues and I in the Region 4 area and also across the state, member of various organizations and alliances, we've shared our best practices. I've gotten feedback from those districts that have already returned face-to-face as it relates to classroom size, physical distancing, what other contact tracing. So we have shared ideas and strategies of how we're going to keep our staff and our students safe.
Great. Okay, so this one is can you go through the process of the state, the TEA lists, how many folks have had COVID, contracted COVID from week to week? You all have to report to that. One of our viewers, Ms. Smith's asking, have any staff members tested positive for COVID in the last 2 weeks? So how will you report those things? How will the public know, if you can just share those things with them?
Great question. I encourage the public to go to our district website, www.houstonISD.org, and the information is actually available on our COVID dashboard.
Well, that was a simple one. That's a good way to find out. Let me ask you this. Let's see what else. Let me scroll through here. We're getting a lot of good questions, Dr. Lathan. So this is very good, very successful here. What will be done to physically distance students and staff on high population campuses?
Well, we have the numbers per campus, the number of students that are returning, the number of staff members, and so all of our schools, in collaboration with our schools office, which are our area superintendents and school support officers, and our facility staff, have actually gone out and conducted a walk from those campuses to ensure that spacing is appropriate and to ensure that everyone can interact safely.
Okay, let's see. Paula Starnes has another question. Actually, Juanita, let's take Juanita's question here. She wants to know, will students be made to eat in classrooms?
And I think that's a great question. I received actually that question a number of times over the past several weeks. Part of our, we have a communicable disease plan committee that made a recommendation for students to eat in the classroom. However, a number of our campuses will utilize their cafeteria. They will also use outdoor seating. And so it will vary just a little bit from campus to campus based on the number of staff and students that are returning. But there will be some students eating in the classrooms.
Okay, how about, what if I want my child to attend school in person Monday through Friday, but their campus is on a hybrid schedule?
So we only have a few high school campuses on a hybrid schedule. All our, let's see, almost 277 of our campuses are actually on a Monday through Friday schedule. So if there's an individual campus that the parent is questioning, please have them to call their campus.
Okay, here's another good one from Jacqueline. She says, teachers and staff are being asked to provide daily symptoms. Will students be required to provide daily symptoms in addition to the temperature testing before they enter the school?
Students will be asked to provide, like I said, we'll do the temperature check, and then that will be the screening as it relates to students. Additional information or concerns will be shared with the School Nurse and Wellness Committee, and then they will conduct additional screenings based on concerns as it relates to students.
I would have to. I know that the teachers have been working and there's extra support on the campus to make sure that they're not doing students are separately distracted from the daily. So that would probably be a better question to ask the campus itself to see how they're doing with the instruction.
Of course,
it's the same format where they'll still be seeking this instruction.
No.
It will reopen normally within 5 days. The campus will reopen, but immediately the school will transition to virtual learning. And parents will receive a call out and an email sharing the information with them and sharing with them when the campus will reopen.
Students who are there, kindergarten, second grade will actually be there. The teacher will be teaching there with the students who are trying to watch it virtually. And so that's how that should work, but the attention will be to those students who are in person. And so we're going to just do things like the way we say, I don't know, it's going to be, I just don't know, or they'll still have the way that's like, they'll still do their there's not that's possible.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to have a great day on Monday. Thank you.
So that's a person that's going to be yeah, so that's how I got budget. But again, that's probably a question that one of the what I want to tell you one day when you get there is every campus has a different plan based on the number of students who are returning, based on the teachers who are there.
Excellent.
And so I don't know if your campus has heard of teachers or something called it. And that's it's all the teachers, all the teachers. That would be something that reach out there.
So students who opted to stay virtual, we have numerous curbside pickup locations throughout the district, and parents can go to the HISD Nutrition Services page to find out times, dates, and locations where they can pick up meals for their students who are remaining virtual.
Franklin, like Benjamin.
Yes.
And used to that. And it just, you know, like Emmett Martinez and then if you haven't heard about it, have someone reach out to you right away.
Right, exactly.
Thank you for calling the phone back, okay?
You are correct. It's not easy stuff, but you know, being intentional and strategic is really just the name of the game these days. All of our campuses have been outfitted with social distancing signs as well as floor markers. So there are brightly colored stickers stuck to the floor marked 6 feet to help guide students and remind them to stay that 6 foot distance apart. If campuses are utilizing the cafeteria for lunch versus the classroom, they have designated which seats can be sat in, which ones cannot. And in fact, some campuses like my own, we took up the cafeteria tables and we replaced those with desks so that would be easier to maintain social distancing, but still allow kids to be able to be in a changed environment and not be in the classroom all day. They're able to eat in the cafeteria and still be safe.
Okay, so here's another one for you from Pearl. How do you all provide lunch for students that decide to do online studies?
So that again, that question we answered, but that would be with the curbside meal pickups and distributions. So Pearl, you can go to the HISD Nutrition Service page and you can find out dates, times, and locations that we will be providing meals for the students that opt to stay virtual.
Anyone who has been within 6 feet of that student, 15 minutes away. So if I'm just passing in the hallway and I happen to come 4 feet away,
Absolutely.
that would be considered contact. If I'm getting closer than 6 feet for 15 minutes, so let's just say kindergarten class. I can only imagine trying to keep them.
It is a tough one. So we do keep in mind the different disabilities, and we work with students with the special needs. And it may require frequent reminders to keep them on and work with them. But again, just like we're teaching academics, we have to teach them about the health and the safety. So we are already asking parents, and we've been asking parents for a couple weeks to practice. Many of the virtual teachers are actually having time on camera with masks so that all kids are able to practice wearing that mask for an extended period of time. And it just goes, it's like walking or running a marathon. It takes conditioning to get used to staying in a mask for a long period of time. So a lot of campuses, like I said, have been trying to get parents at home to practice with us, whether while we're virtual, so that when we come back, it's not quite as big of an adjustment for our children. But with our children with special needs, we absolutely are going to continue to work with them and teach them about those safe practices.
Okay, I've got another question. I think I understand what Christina's asking. My kids are virtual, but can they return before the next 6 weeks, if for any reason? That's the part that threw me, for any reason. So if somebody's virtual, when can they return?
So the next grading cycle, what the district is asking is that we maintain the 6-week grading cycle. That does not mean that is set in stone. That would they would need to contact the campus principal and find out. Part of, like Dr. Lathan mentioned earlier, is the way that we've configured classrooms is based on the numbers reported. That's why we asked for those numbers all the way up until September 28th, which allowed us to make sure that we kept safe spacing in our common areas, our classrooms. Does not mean that there's not room at that campus, but that's going to be a campus by campus based decision, and you would contact your child's school to see the capabilities of changing back from virtual to face. However, the end of the 9 weeks is on December 4th, so beginning December 6th, we will have the next phase in. So if parents in that time will send out another survey, they can change, and then that way schools can adjust their plan based on CDC guidelines so that we make sure that we're staying safe.
Okay, a question here from Veronica Lewis. Actually, I'm sorry, we just answered her. Ricardo Martinez. He wants to know, kids need 100% on bilingual teacher, not 50% support. Will there be 100% online teachers for these students? So it sounds like maybe he's suggesting that there aren't enough right now.
So I'm a little unclear on the question, so I'm going to try to answer it. And Ricardo, if I don't answer it, if you'll just rephrase that question, I'm going to try my best to answer. Yes, our bilingual students are being taught by the same teachers that they would be taught in the building. So if your child is designated for a bilingual class, they should be getting instruction following the recommendations for the minutes for bilingual. We do incorporate ESL. There is a time, so it's not 100% on any of our campuses, because we do have, based on the grade level, designated times that we do English language development. But if your child is coded for bilingual, they should be being instructed by a bilingual teacher. What I would do is, if that is not what's happening, I would contact the campus principal and just clarify and make sure that there's not an error in the location of that child's coding, or that they're not in the wrong class or something to that, because definitely they should be receiving bilingual services, whether they're online or face-to-face, because it's the same teachers instructing.
All right, I think you covered that well, kind of different angles at it, so perfect. And like you said, Ricardo, you can just write us back if you wanted us to follow up on that. How about this? Let's switch to buses. We haven't talked any about buses. Bus services will resume on a limited basis because physical distancing drastically reduces bus capacity. Students who will receive transportation services are special education students, homeless students, elementary school students, and those who attend schools with specialty instructional programs. Does that sound about right for what services will be provided?
Yes, that sounds absolutely right. The elementary was actually just the last added to that list. So as you see, the district is making adjustments in real time based on the numbers that we have reported to come back, and also the ability of us to ensure social distancing and cleaning in between routes and drop-offs and pickups for our students. So yes, I would make sure and keep up with the HISD transportation website. They will update if we add additional groups of students to the transportation rosters.
Okay, great. How about this one? Will we be able to see the cameras in school to make sure the safety is being done properly? I have a feeling that's probably a no, but just because of privacy issues, but
unfortunately, yeah, it is a no, exactly, and that's exactly right, because our cameras have all of our children on them, and so we would not be enacting students' privacy by making those public cameras. It also opens up to security, concerns for our kids, and ultimately we want to keep them safe. As a parent, if I have concerns about whether or not that cleaning is happening, I would absolutely contact the campus principal and have that conversation and bring that concern to the principal so that there can be a dialogue behind what measures are happening on that campus. And if there is a concern, the principal can tell you schedules and things like that.
all right. You know what? One thing about the buses, I don't think I should ask you about. What are the requirements if you're on the bus? What will bus drivers be required to wear, and how about students in the seating? I don't know if you mentioned any of that a minute ago.
No, we didn't talk about that. PPE is required in all bus routes, so the driver will have on their PPE. There's also sanitizing. As students enter the bus, they'll be able to get hand sanitizer. There will be one student per seat, and they will sit by the window. Also, the bus will drop down about 6 to 8 of the windows just to ensure that we have extra ventilation on school buses as they transport students throughout the district. After they drop off kids, the bus drivers are responsible for cleaning that bus and disinfecting the bus before they pick up another batch of students.
Great, that's perfect. Interesting question. What symptoms, you like when I say it's going to be an interesting question, right? Which requirement is more critical, providing in-person learning for families choosing in-person teaching, or meeting the 6-foot social physical distancing requirement? What happens when the 6-foot requirement cannot be met?
So I think it's a balancing act. As the CDP states and the CDC says that it is recommended 6 feet when possible, there might be an instance. What we don't want to do is interrupt a student's education. So let's say that a classroom fits 10 students at the 6-foot parameters, but there's 11 students returning to that class. We could safely rearrange that room to fit in one more desk so that that student doesn't have a change in teachers. One of the most important things for our kids in instruction and education is consistency. We're not going to violate safety in that, but there are parameters that we can add in one more desk. Maybe we can take out another piece of furniture that happens to be in there so that we can get a kid in the room versus maybe a bookcase.
Very good. Let's see, the other one I had for you, it's also a little bit, here, I'm going to lay it on you. What symptoms will staff be asked to report from children in their classrooms? Will there be a designated area for symptomatic children?
That's a great question. So, of course, we follow the guidelines of the CDP and the CDC of the COVID symptoms. And so if a teacher notices something about a student, they would then notify the school nurse. The school nurse will take the child and do an exam, just check, ask questions, take their temperature, things like that. Should there be a possible consideration that child is ill and contagious, every campus is outfitted with what we call a SHIP room, S-H-I-P. And this is just almost like a small quarantine area where we can supervise that child, and it's outside of the clinic, so they're not coming in contact with a lot of other people. So a lot of campuses have just an extra classroom or an extra office space that is designated. The school nurse or one of the school's wellness team members would be in their room. They would, of course, have their PPE on, their mask, their face shield, their gown, their gloves, and they would monitor the student while we're waiting on the parent to come and pick up that student. But that way we're limiting exposure to any other students or staff.
So we have everything in place to maintain safety, to make sure that they're going to have.
Okay, we're doing good. We're really doing great with the questions, and thank you, Principal, for tackling these. Some of them are a little bit more complicated, but obviously you're a wealth of knowledge here. I know the parents appreciate that.
Well, I'm a parent as well, so
exactly.
I can look at this from a principal and a parent's lens because, it makes a difference.
Amen. Let's see. Will staff be allowed to bring their own cleaning supplies, like Lysol spray, Lysol disinfective wipes? That's an easy one.
So the district is providing plenty of cleaning supplies, but we do know we have teachers that just want extra. As long as it's an allowable cleaning supply based on the HISD list, and it is also registered with the school nurse where we keep a log of all chemicals that are on campus just in case there would be a student ingested or anything like that. There are certain products that are banned, and so the teachers can't bring just whatever they want. It has to be an approved, but if they feel that they want extra disinfectant wipes or extra gloves, my first recommendation would talk to that building principal because most likely there's extra stuff on the campus. But absolutely, if the teacher feels that they want to bring their own Lysol wipes, as long as they're approved products, they're more than welcome to have extras in their classroom.
Here's a good one. I think it's pretty quick and easy. I think I know the answer. Will digital learning centers continue to operate after in-person instruction resumes?
No, they won't. So the digital learning centers were an access point for our students, whether it was a technology issue or a Wi-Fi connection issue. And so now that we're going to be back face-to-face, the students have the option of being back in school. So the district distance learning centers will no longer function. They will just be functioning as their normal campus.
Okay, let's see. Jacqueline's got a question. Will staff be allowed? No, we did that one. Sorry. I just like asking questions twice. Are there teachers with both in-person and online classes? How do they balance teaching both types of students?
So we do have several campuses that are doing this simultaneous learning. And so most of the campuses that I'm aware of have been practicing this week. So they set up second devices with second cameras, and the teacher can instruct the virtual kids and project the same lesson to the face-to-face kids. However, they can move about the room as well. So it's definitely a learning curve for everybody, I think, in education, how to deliver both the simultaneous, but it is also based on the numbers of that campus. There are some campuses who have a very, very high number of virtual and are able to break off and have just a couple face-to-face teachers and mostly virtual, or vice versa. But the kids are getting the instruction from certified teachers in both modalities, and the schedule is also allowing for those intervention groups and tutorials based on student needs, no matter whether they're face-to-face or virtual.
Okay, we've covered this one. Let's go ahead and answer it again. For folks on YouTube are asking, do the schools quarantine when a student or staff member test positive?
Yes, the schools would quarantine based on the exposure of staff and students to anybody that tests positive. So as we talked about earlier, the campus would be shut down. Normally it's shut down for 3 to 5 days for cleaning purposes. However, those who would come in direct contact with a positive case would self-quarantine for 14 days, and they would resume back to face-to-face after that time. During their quarantine, teachers would teach virtually as they are doing right now, and students would learn virtually. So we're not going to stop the instructional flow during your quarantine, but we are going to make sure that we're all safe.
All right. So it's Friday night. Let's talk Friday Night Lights. Can you talk to us about plans for sports? I know that's kind of a broad. Why don't we just start right now with football? Any other sports that you're aware of going on right now at this time of the year?
So there are several high schools that have volleyball going on as well. The kids who are on sidelines, it's limited to numbers, and they are required to wear their mask when they're not in play. Also, the number of people on the sidelines, for instance, cheerleading squads are being asked to minimize numbers. Pep squads are asked to minimize numbers so that we don't have large groups. And also just to spread out on the sidelines, the 6 feet distance. If you've watched some of the football highlights on the news, you'll see that the cheerleaders are cheering in masks and the pep squad are doing their dances in their masks, and they're spread out in those stands. The same with the visitors who are coming to watch. They are minding the social distancing based on the facility that is hosting the game.
All right, more broadly speaking, how about extracurricular activities? Are they resuming? It's kind of a broad, there's a lot of extracurricular things going on, so.
Yes, so there are, and I'm going to look at my notes here because there's some of them that I personally don't do, so I don't want to make sure I don't give any inaccurate information. But when we're talking about extracurricular, it is campus by campus on what is offered. We talked about extracurricular as in drama and art and theater. Yes, but students aren't allowed to share equipment. So if we are having bands and things like that, students do have to have their own instruments. If we're doing theater arts, they can't pass a script. Every student would need to have their own script. So while we are able to still participate in extracurriculars, things pre-COVID, such as passing a script or passing a prop in a theater arts program, that's not going to be allowed right at this point in time. So we're trying to make accommodations for the sharing of any sorts of equipment, but we do carry on with allowing our students to participate in those extracurricular events.
All right, we have got another question. In my son's school, he was told that only an hour will be dedicated on virtual class. Is this true, and why an hour? I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I don't either.
What I would do as a parent is I would contact that school just to kind of clarify on the daily schedule. Campuses do have various schedules, and so I'm not sure if she's saying that there's only an hour of face-to-face instruction virtually or what, but I would definitely contact that campus and speak to an administrator so she can get clarification on what the instructional framework is for her son's school.
Right. That was unfair. I'm sorry I threw that one at you. I did not read that one ahead of time.
That's all right.
So, but again, like we had said earlier, if you want to clarify your question, please write back to us, and Principal Edwards will be happy to do that for us. How about, are there still pre-K seats available for this school year?
There are absolutely pre-K seats. There are seats available in every grade level. So our district has numerous campuses that have pre-K 3 and pre-K 4. You are welcome to call the school in your area. Pre-K is not zoned in HISD, but it would be a space-by-state space based on what campuses are currently enrolled in pre-K. So we encourage you to reach out to a campus of interest to you and ask what the space available is for their pre-K program, and they can also direct you on what is the process to get your child enrolled. But that goes for every grade level. We need our kids back.
How is HISD handling contact tracing for any student, staff, or teacher who tests positive?
So we have on the HISD website, there is our COVID-19 dashboard. And so if you've ever pulled that up, it shows a map of the district. It'll show you where there are actual positive cases, potential exposures. And so that is how you can keep up-to-date information on the status of cases throughout the district. We are keeping up with the contact tracing through sign-in sheets and logs. Of course, as students enter the building, we talked earlier about those temperature checks being taken, and we do minimize transitions within the school. So school days do look a little bit different. It does not mean that a student is confined to one room for the entire day, but at the same time, they're not going to move throughout that building as they did pre-COVID, just as freely as they want. And that is for the simple fact that we want to be able to contain and track where students go in case there is a possible exposure or a positive case.
So, if my child is listed as no longer enrolled, how can I register him or her in school?
So if your child is no longer enrolled, it might have been that there was a failure to make connection or contact during those first couple days and they were marked as the no-show. That does not mean that they cannot get back in school. So you can simply contact back the school that they were enrolled in. You do have to go through the re-enrollment process, which means you would have to bring back up or provide a copy of the birth certificate, social security card, proof of residency, the last report card, those standard enrollment items. But you just contact the campus and they can work on helping you get your child re-enrolled.
All right. Let's see, I would like information, actually our viewer would like information about how they can access important school information about their child. I guess this would probably be if they're making sure they're signed up at the right school and that sort of thing.
Okay, so first, if you just don't know what school your child is supposed to attend, if you go to the HISD website, there is you enter your address and it's a Find My School. And so once the parent enters the address, it will link them to their zone school. At that point, I would call the school and I would visit that school's website as well for all of the most current information. Our schools do an excellent job of keeping parents informed via the school website. Many schools also use social media. But if you're not sure of what school or you moved recently, you definitely go to that HISD website, enter the address, and it will populate with the zone school for your child.
Okay. We have a question about STAR testing. Will grades and attendance STAR tests also count this year?
Yes, that is all based on TEA guidelines. So as of right now, STAR is still on the schedule to occur for grades 3 through 11 and those EOC courses for some of those 12th graders. Grades and attendance, we talked a little bit earlier about attendance. Attendance is a little different this year. If you're face-to-face, you are present or you're not present. However, if you're virtual, there are 3 ways that your attendance can be tracked. One, it's participation in a live or synchronous lesson with your teacher on Teams. The second is that if you miss a live lesson, whether it be to an internet outage or technology failure or, for our little kids, maybe it's just the parent's work schedule. If the student works in the hub and submits an assignment before 11:59 p.m., they are also counted present for that day. The third way is that, let's say it is the technology and Wi-Fi is down. Our teachers are calling to find out why students didn't engage in learning. And during that time, the teacher may have a phone lesson with your child. And if your child engages in that phone lesson with their teacher, they can also be counted present. As for grades, grades count just like they would if they were in the building. That's part of the reason why we're shifting to being unified using the hub. This is where students submit assignments and they're also able to see their grades. Parents are able to keep real-time grades using the HISD Connect Parent Portal. They can monitor attendance, grades, and a whole lot of other information. So we do encourage parents to utilize HISD Connect's Parent Portal.
And again, we want to thank Principal Edwards for joining us this morning, and I hope we're getting a lot of your answers answered here, or your questions answered here, rather. Monday, HISD's back to school. Those students wanting to return to school are going to be doing that, so we're taking your questions. You can also call the number you see if you want to speak with somebody directly, but I just want to reset there. Let me ask a question of you now from Brian Paniagua. He says, if a child is not feeling well and they are sent home, do they need to take a COVID test, or can they just return after 10 days?
So that's going to be a case-by-case basis, and so if your child is sent home from school, there will be a conversation with the nurse after they've been evaluated. The nurse will either refer them to a physician to do a full evaluation, but that would definitely be a case-by-case basis on what is causing your child not to feel well.
Now, I've got a question about, this was something that was in the past discussed. It was publicized, I should say, as dress code. People have asked about dress code for people at home that are doing virtual. Can you talk to us about that, please?
So, of course, we can't regulate what you wear in your house, but we do want people to be mindful of the camera. And teachers request the camera on because it's really important for student engagement that the teachers can engage in dialogue with your student. As educators, we pick up on a lot of nonverbal. When kids make faces, we understand they don't understand something. And so with that being in mind, we want students to be appropriately dressed on the camera, and also for the families to be mindful of the background of what's coming through on the camera. One of the nice things about the Teams app that we're using from Microsoft is that there's an option to blur the background to where only thing that's visible is the child in the camera. So that keeps some privacy for your home. But as far as dress code, there's not a dress code for home. We're just asking that students be appropriately dressed while on camera.
Perfect. Just got another question here from Evelyn. Will HISD follow Harris County Department guidelines for following and contact tracing protocols in place to prevent spreading COVID-19? And will all student families be contacted to let them know of a possible exposure? Again, another one we've talked about, but she's live with us right now or listening, so.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely a hot topic. So yes, Dr. Lathan and our cabinet, they stay in constant communication with Harris County as well as Region 4 and other state health advisory committees. And that is one thing that is always up and kept current on the HISD website is our communicable disease plan. And that will go really, really deep into what protocols and procedures we have in place. It's accessible in English and Spanish to our parents, and it updates as those guidelines from those authorities change based on our COVID status as a state, as a county, and as a district.
Okay. So we're making some good progress. Anything that you want to talk about that hasn't come up in a question yet? I give you a moment. Anything you can think of, Principal Edwards?
Down your second.
And while you're thinking about that one, I do have the information up right now with the number for the phone bank. You can reach out to us on KHOU's Facebook and YouTube page. And tell me, Principal Edwards, what time will we stream through 1 o'clock. What time is the phone bank open until today?
The phone bank is also open from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. today, and it's also open tomorrow.
Okay, so same number, call the same number tomorrow. Okay, perfect. In a little while, we will be breaking into 11 News at noon. Interim Superintendent Lathan is going to join us, and that'll be just in a little bit, so we'll switch gears there in a moment. But until then, another question for you. Will teachers and staff be provided with face shields?
Yes. So all of the teachers and staff on campus are provided with one of the clear face shields. This is not an option to wear instead of a mask. Staff is still required to wear a mask. As we know, the face shield is not what prevents the spread of COVID. But it is an additional layer of protection with a mask. But yes, those are provided by the district, and campuses have already received those.
What if my child still does not have the technology needed to participate in virtual learning at home?
That would definitely be a question or a comment that I would bring forth to the campus principal. They are able to then update our tech needs surveys for the campus, and they are able to start to link that student with the resources that they need so that they can participate in virtual learning. We do know that there have been changes. Devices have been inoperable that students were using, in the spring last year. So that is something that they definitely need to notify their child's campus on.
Another question, a good question about special populations of students, our special needs students. One, we discussed the buses, but if you can review that again, and anything for students that are in person, information those folks, parents would want to know about.
Okay, so we did talk about the buses, and the buses will be running for all of our special education students. They are limited to one student per seat. They will sit by the window. They will have to wear their PPE, as will the bus driver. They will sanitize their hands when entering and exiting the bus, and between loads of kids or between drop-off and pickup of a new set of children, the bus driver will disinfect that bus. In addition to that, to add that extra ventilation, the bus driver will have 6 to 8 windows, depending on the size of the bus, down, just to allow for extra airflow. Once the kids arrive on campus, their IEP and accommodations and modifications will be followed. Whether that student is a 504 student, if they are under the special ed, if they're a dyslexia student, they will still be serviced following their IEP goals or their 504 accommodations.
I'd say this is a big one over the summer. We talked about mental health a lot, and is the district offering social and emotional support for kiddos? A lot of different things that are going on in their lives right now.
Absolutely, and this is something that HISD put in place prior to COVID. It was a big push because we know that if a student's basic needs and if their mental health is not addressed, then it inhibits them from being the best learner that they can be. So we do continue to utilize our social and emotional department. What parents noticed is on that virtual schedule, and it continues with the face-to-faces, there's a designated time where teachers engage in social and emotional learning with students. And those are non-academic conversations. Those are things that we talk about. Right now, COVID has really created trauma for our students and our teachers and our staff members. So for us to just act like it didn't happen is going to keep people from being their best version of themselves. So we intentionally provide times for dialogue. We let kids talk about how are they feeling, what are their fears. Some kids are fearful as well as their parents, but they're sending them back to school because the parents have to work. And so we want to make sure that we have conversations where students are able to express their concerns, teachers are able to know where a student feels, so then we can talk about how we are keeping them safe. We've had people lose family members to COVID, and so we need to talk about the grief process, and we need to talk about what is it to lose a family member. And so that is something that parents kind of wondered what happens during that SEL time on a student's schedule, but that's where we do different types of activities with kids. We might use literature to open up that conversation. We might use community circles to open up a dialogue where kids can talk about how they're feeling and what is impacting them with their social and their emotional health.
So important. It can have such an effect on child's learning and how they progress going forward. Just these little things that we don't even we don't even think of and or we've forgotten about since we were little, right? We've got different problems now, but they're both big issues no matter what age you are. So thanks it's a neat service. Are immunizations required for students who select virtual learning?
So immunizations are still required as part of the enrollment process. So whether they're virtual or face-to-face, we still need the immunization records because that's just part of our HISD's enrollment process. And eventually, kids are going to come back to the building. We don't know when. And so that we do have to follow those guidelines set by the state and stay in accordance with immunization policies.
All right, our questions have slowed down just a little bit here. You've covered quite a bit. We've talked about buses. We've talked about processes for if someone in the school is ill. Trying to think about what else there is, Principal. What about you? How are you taking care of yourself?
You know what? It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act for sure. Just like we try to teach our kids is that we have to be in tune with our body and our mental space. We have to be proactive in keeping ourselves safe, and we have to focus on what we have control of and what's positive. My staff has been phenomenal in, working, and we've practiced routines on our campus. We've practiced what are transitions going to look like? How are we going to move kids from the classroom to the restroom, and from the restroom to the cafeteria? And so that was a lot of fun to practice as a staff because as adults, we have to be the model of that social distancing, and sometimes we get caught up in the hustle and bustle, and so it was really, we made it into a game. We stood on the markers on the floor, and we acted as if, we were the kids and we moved through the building so that we were able to also see in our systems as a campus what was going to work with kids and what did we maybe need to adjust so that on Monday we're ready to receive our kids safely. In addition to that, Monday we have a campus huddle right after dismissal so we can have all of the teachers and all of the staff come back and reflect on what worked and what didn't work. Do we need to make an adjustment? Did what we want to happen during lunchtime with the kids in the desks versus at tables, did that happen? And so at that moment in time, we're able to quickly make an adjustment and be ready for the next day so that we can ensure that we provide the highest quality service and safety to our students and staff.
We touched on this one. Let's touch on it again. Parents are asking, and by the way, that's good information because I don't mean to change the subject. It's important. We all care about our teachers, and you all. We realize, we don't know it personally, but we can see it from afar, and it's got to be a lot. So thank you for all that you all are doing to look after our kids. Let me switch to a question now. We talked about uniforms before. Are they required for in-person learning this year?
Uniforms are not required. They are encouraged if you have them. If you don't, students just need to come to school in school-appropriate clothing. We do still have some families that uniforms is the easiest thing for them. Many of our schools are equipped with wraparound specialists, and those wraparound specialists partner with different entities in the community. Many of the schools have uniform closets where we've gotten donated uniforms. So if there's an issue of clothing, whether it be uniform or not for a student to be in-person learning, they need to contact that school. The principal, the office staff, and we can work to get that for the students so that they can attend in-person learning.
Copy that. That's a very good question. Do you have a recommendation? Does HISD offer a place to go for COVID-19 testing?
So on our website, there are different clinics that offer free testing. And so those clinics are available based on the HISD website. There are some drive-by locations that Harris County has that we also have readily available to our parents for free testing. And so all of this can be found on our reopening page, so that parent resources are there, student resources are there, and some of those locations for the free COVID testing are found in that reopening plan.
All right, I think if the superintendent, is she close by there right now? We are ready to get her on TV, hopefully shortly,
Sure.
Otherwise we'll have you on TV.
Dr. Lathan? All right.
Tell her they are
Down, so
very
if you want to
close.
Give her a second if we have a couple more questions.
I think we'll probably be about a minute away, so 90 seconds away, so we'll see if she can dip in or not.
Prepared to do weather before having her.
Working on it.
Yes, she's on her way right now.
Okay, they say she's on her way right now. I would go to weather.
We're going to do weather before we do this interview.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do weather first, and then that way we'll come back. Everybody on the live stream, you get to hear the behind the scenes a little bit. So let's answer one more question. So before she gets there, unless you see her coming, where will?
Sure. Not yet, but so we can take another question.
Sure. Okay. How about we talked about quarantining a little bit already. We'll get in that one after because that's a deep subject. Somebody asked about Metro bus passes for high school students.
They would need to contact the campus directly. If that campus has a wraparound specialist, the wraparound specialist would be able to connect them with the Metro bus passes that we've provided to high school students in the past. But that's kind of a campus-based service that they work with wraparound. But if that is a concern, I would absolutely take that to the building principal.
Sounds good. That's an important one there. What if my child wants to attend, how quick of a turnaround it is if they decide they want to attend in person and then they, or vice versa, how quickly can they switch?
That's going to be a campus-by-campus decision. Now, switching from face-to-face to virtual, that can happen as fast as you give them a call, and as soon as they go home, we switch them to virtual. When you're coming from virtual to face-to-face, that could take a little bit longer, and we're not talking a long time frame, but that's going to be based on that campus capacity. They may just have to reconfigure something to fit the child in, but contact that building principal, and I guarantee they'll work with that parent on getting that child back in the school.
All right. And that answered that question that we had just gotten. How can I see the number of COVID-19 cases in the district?
Again, the COVID-19 dashboard is found on the HISD.org website. And so when you go to that HISD website, it's actually at that top banner and it says COVID-19 dashboard. Parents can click on there. They can look at maps. They can look at zones. There's just a plethora of information there on cases, exposures, and cleaning. Schools that have been shut down and reopened. All of that information is on our COVID-19 dashboard.
So if my school is closed due to COVID-19 case, how long are you looking at until it reopens?
She's still not there trying to move up the
We're looking at about 5 days. Immediately, cleaning crews are deployed to the campus to do that deep cleaning and disinfectant. But right now, the average is staying between 3 to 5 days for campuses to be closed so that we can thoroughly clean and ensure that they're safe for return of students and staff.
Well, we're going to put out another prompt
During
for
that
people
time?
to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So during any possible closure for cleaning, we just returned to virtual learning. So students would just log in and teachers would be at home, and we continue with that instructional program regardless of being out of the building for a few days.
I had asked earlier, any interesting things that have come about during all of this that, especially with other districts opening up before yours, that you all have learned and maybe surprised you?
So just watching on the news the districts that are opening. Ooh, I see Dr. Lathan walking in. We're about ready to transition. Dr. Lathan is on a board with several principals, so she's able to dialogue about what's worked and what hasn't. All right, come on.
Here she is. She's good to go. She can hear you on Live 5 if you want to talk to her.
Sir, you just have to put it on speaker. That's fine.
I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot. I was delivering my boss's day gifts. No, I didn't have pockets. And I had, Rebecca had Rebecca's
Our
gift.
phone bank's open now until 1 p.m., taking your questions before students in HISD are allowed to return back to the classroom on Monday. A reminder, that number to call, 713-556-INFO or 713-566-4636.
Great day! On Monday's Great Day Houston, you hear about it all the time, but do you know what blood pressure really means and how it relates to heart health? And by the way, what's the proper way to take your blood pressure? We'll take you to a place that will help you stop a heart attack before it even happens. And live life to the fullest in your next chapter, the unique senior living experience where residents never stop finding joy and purpose every day.
Great Day Houston, Monday morning at 9.
1 out of 5 kids are bullied. 9 out of 10 LGBT students are bullied. Bullied students experience anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and suicidal thoughts. Become a leader in the fight against bullying with the helpful resources at khou.com.
Gina Kalani claims she'll represent Texas values, but her campaign is backed by radical groups that want to confiscate guns. And Kalani's former business was tax forfeited because they refused to pay their taxes. Texans deserve a true leader, Mike Schofield. Schofield wrote the bills that banned a state income tax and safeguarded election laws. Mike Schofield will stand with police officers and first responders by fighting attempts to defund our police. For our Texas values, Mike Schofield for state representative.
As sheriff, Troy Nels' record of neglect and mismanagement was devastating to Fort Bend. His jails had a trail of suicides. A recent audit found multiple cases of sexual misconduct under Nels' watch. One lawsuit even accused Nels of overlooking video evidence of repeated abuse of a minor by his own volunteer, and then refusing treatment for the young victim. Now, Troy Nels is running to represent you in Congress. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Heads up, moms and dads. HISD is canceling school on Election Day. That is in-person and virtual classes. District says this is to avoid voters coming into contact with students. More than 100 HISD campuses will be polling places on November 3rd, so you may want to start planning now for childcare that Tuesday, November the 3rd. KHOU is your education station. That's why we are partnering with HISD today to answer your questions before those in-person classes start on Monday. Our phone bank continues, so you can call to ask questions or submit them to our KHOU Facebook and YouTube pages. Joining us right now, Interim Superintendent Dr. Grenita Lathan. Thanks for being here. So let's start with the kids getting to school. Not all kids can ride buses. What are the changes?
Thank you for having me and co-sponsoring this event with us today. For transportation, priority will be given to special education students, homeless students, Elementary students, students that attend a specialty school that submitted a request for face-to-face instruction by October 2nd.
All right, but then obviously big thing is you need to check because your kid may not immediately be able to get on a bus. Once the kids get to campus, what are the kinds of changes they're going to see?
Once students arrive to campus, number one, parents cannot escort students into the building. They will need to drop them off at the front doors or the designated entry. When students enter into the building, their temperatures will be checked. They will receive a mask, and then they will be directed or escorted to their classrooms.
All right, and lunchtime, are you going to be able to use cafeterias?
For lunch, we will use cafeterias, we will use classrooms, we will use also outdoor space.
All right. And I know you told us about 40% of the students are planning to return to class on Monday. Is there any kind of a limit on the number of kids in classrooms?
So as it relates, and that's a great question, as it relates to spacing in classrooms and number of students, we are adhering to 4 to 6 feet of physical distancing. And so the size of that classroom will guide the number of students that will actually be placed in the classroom. So on campus A, it might be 15 students. On campus B, it might be 20 students.
And once a student has chosen to return to in-person learning, can they change their mind and flip-flop back to virtual learning?
Yes, a parent and a student can make the choice to go back to virtual learning. We're asking parents to make that decision or change at the end of the grading cycle so it doesn't disrupt or hurt students as it relates to their overall grades.
All right, so you have to choose per grading cycle, is that correct?
Yes, that's what we're encouraging parents to do, is to make a change at the end of the grading cycle.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Lathan. I know you've got a lot going on, and of course, you've got a lot of information on the HISD website as well, yes?
Yes, and also they can call us at 713-556-4636.
Perfect segue. Thank you very much, Dr. Lathan, because we are until 1 p.m. As you heard, that's the number there, and same one on your screen, 713-556-4636 or info. As well, you can submit questions on Facebook and
You broke up. Do you mind asking that question again?
Yes, ma'am. I guess a lot of parents are concerned, and things will be adjusted as you guys go, right?
Yes, we will make the necessary adjustments. And, you know, this happens every year at the beginning of the school year when we return, that you make necessary adjustments during the first or second week of campus, of school. We're prepared to receive our students on Monday, and we will make the necessary adjustments with safety in mind. And safety really is our number one priority.
And then also teacher concerns as far as like PPE. Are they going to be given PPE starting next week?
Teachers actually return this week. They've received all campus PPE has been delivered, so teachers should already have their PPE, or they've received their kits today.
And then as far as are the students going to be able to see like those dividers that we've seen those, what are they called, like plastic dividers that divide each student, or how's it going to work?
We will not be placing plexiglass dividers on each of our students' desks. We have plexiglass dividers at our front entrance and when you're interacting with front office staff and on our teacher desk, but we will not place those dividers on individual student desks.
Perfect. Anything else that you'd like to add, Super?
Just want to thank our principals and our teachers for their hard work and their dedication. I want to thank our parents for their patience. Monday, October 19th is going to be a great day.
Perfect. That works for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sergio. Bye.
You good? Are y'all sure there? Are y'all sure?
One more interview.
Milton.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, Keith.
Okay, great. I think I might be getting feedback somehow. Do you have your headset there still that you can plug in?
They died.
Oh, gotcha.
Let me see if I can get them back up. They might have gotten a little juice in them. Let's see. Okay, let's try it now. I can hear you. I got them back in. I think I got a little bit more charge in them.
Okay, great. Here we are. We're back again. No, you're fine. We are back now with Principal Meagan Edwards from Grissom Elementary. She has been handling all your questions this morning, now in the afternoon. Let's go back to some of the earlier questions we had from some folks until we get people coming in again on the stream. They were asking about transportation. Let's cover transportation, if you don't mind covering that again. They had asked initially about middle school, about how that would work. Maybe you could mention also again about high school and metro and how that'll all work out.
All right, so currently HISD transportation services are provided for special education students, homeless students, and they've now, there's some priority students. Just recently, at the beginning of the week, they added elementary schools. And this is all dependent on the number of students who are returning face-to-face that require transportation. And so as numbers change, we get the bus routes and all of that squared away. We may be able to add more groups of students. Currently, right now, we are not servicing high school and middle school unless they go to a special campus. And those parents are notified from the transportation services of the routes, the pickup times, drop-offs, all of that. In the past, HISD has had a partnership where high schools and middle schools can get some of the Metro bus passes. Those are campus by campus basis, and so you can contact the school and see if they have those cards available for students. If they have a wraparound specialist on campus, which most of our campuses do have, they're able to reach out to Metro and obtain some of those so that we can ensure that our kids are getting to school if they opt in for face-to-face learning.
How about access to soap and to hand sanitizer? I'm assuming those things are going to be everywhere you turn in the building.
Yes, so of course there's, as always, there is soap dispensers in the restroom where kids are encouraged to utilize those, wash their hands with soap and water. Part of the signage throughout the building talks about how to wash your hands, because our kids, sometimes they just put the soap on and rub, but we are actually going and talking about rubbing the fronts and the backs and the wrists and the nail beds, and washing their hands for that 20 seconds. Also, upon entry of the campuses, there are mobile sanitizing stations where kids can squirt their hands with the sanitizer. Again, we go over how to utilize that sanitizer effectively. Each classroom has a sanitizer dispenser in it, as well as disinfectant wipes, gloves, and other cleaning products, so that we maintain the cleanliness in the classroom. Throughout the hallways, there are sanitizing stations, and if you know any educator's sanitizer is probably a teacher's best friend, even before COVID. So parents usually send a couple bottles, for the class, and so our kids get squirted pretty regularly with sanitizer.
Well, if something does happen, probably our most asked question today, as we're kind of winding into the last half hour here, just talk again about what will happen if someone does test positive in the school. Let's start there.
Okay, so if someone tests positive in the school, of course, parents and staff members would get notified from that campus. Any parties that have potential exposures or have come in contact with a party who is positive would be notified. In addition to that, the district deploys out a cleaning crew that is a specialized cleaning crew that does not just like our daily regular cleaning, but they come in to do a deep cleaning and sanitation of that campus. Campus in its entirety or the areas affected would be shut down for that cleaning process, and that usually takes about 3 to 5 days. If a campus is to close down, we just simply resume virtual learning. That's why we ask our kids to ensure that they have their devices taken home with them every day. If they bring them to school to utilize in the classroom, they have to go home every day because we never know if we get a call after school of a potential positive case and notify parents after hours. We want to ensure that our kids are ready and continuously learning, whether it be face-to-face or having to switch back for a closure to virtual learning.
So, if someone does test positive, how long until they can return to the school? Or what's the protocol?
So if someone tests positive, we follow the CDC guidelines, which is 14 days of self-quarantine. And then upon that conclusion of that quarantine, they're able to return back to campus. If it is an adult and a staff member, we're going to try to see if we can get negative test results from the doctor, but we know that there has been some issues with the test results coming back with kids, and so the CDC is not always recommending that kids get multiple tests. But if they have been free of symptoms and they've been quarantined for 14 days, then they are allowed to return back to campus.
I got a question about how many kids will be allowed in classrooms. Does it vary across the different age groups, grades?
It doesn't vary by age group or grades. It varies by the space. So different campuses have different capacities within their classroom that we can fit a different number of kids. Some of your older campuses have smaller classrooms. So of course the class size would be smaller at those campuses due to space. It's not about age, it's not about grade level, it's about maintaining that 6-foot spacing in every instance that it's possible so that we ensure that kids are back learning, but that, most importantly, that everyone is kept safe.
That makes a lot of sense. Hallways, I'm sure, get very tight place to be. Let's see.
Yes, hallways are marked with markers on the floor to help kids know what 6 feet looks like. And so those just help, whether it's an elementary or it's a high school campus, there are floor markers just like you see at the grocery store and things like that. It just helps people remember how far is 6 feet away so that I can keep my distance even in those transition or common areas throughout the campus.
How often does each school do a deep cleaning? Is that a daily basis? I mean, I don't even know what is a deep cleaning.
It is. So our campuses, our custodial staffs are just simply amazing. They've always kept our campuses very clean, but in the midst of COVID, we have had to up the cleaning procedures. Every hour, common high contact surface, door handles, countertops, the restrooms, those sorts of areas are cleaned every hour on schedule, as well as in our self-contained classrooms if there's a restroom inside of there. We know that pre-K classrooms and some of our special education self-contained classrooms have a restroom. They're also on that 1 hour schedule where we clean in between. Anytime there is a transition of kids in a classroom, the desks are wiped down with those disinfectant wipe, as are the seats. So the cleaning process is much higher caliber than it was before COVID. In the afternoons, there is deeper cleaning than normal, but our campuses have really done a great job of maintaining a high level of cleanliness, both pre-COVID and then with the additional frequency now that we have COVID in the picture.
Suggestion for parents, I think it's no different than when a child was feeling sick before all of this COVID came about. What should parents do if they feel that their child is sick?
So if your child is sick, of course, we want you to keep your child home. We know that when kids feel sick, there's a different level. If your child is experiencing to where they don't feel well, yeah, keep them home. If they're not too sick at home and they want to engage in virtual learning, they are more than welcome to. But if they're too sick to engage, just contact your school so that we know that we're aware of what's going on. And then just like regular, after they've been fever-free for 24 hours, if it's a non-COVID related illness, they can return to campus. But we do ask that if your child isn't feeling well, go ahead and keep them home just for everybody's safe and well-being.
So I know some school districts, the way they do the virtual learning is that the teacher, whether they're in class or they're virtually learning, are the same. Is that the case with HISD? And I guess that goes to asking you, how quickly could somebody switch from being remote learner to an in-class learner?
So most of our campuses make that decision based on the numbers of students that they have returning for the simultaneous face-to-face, the teacher teaching both the virtual kids and the face-to-face kids simultaneously. I think the question from the parent is, how do I switch my choice for my child? If you're face-to-face and you just become uncomfortable or something happens in your home that you want to return back to virtual, it's as simple as a phone call and contacting your student's school, and that's a real easy switch. Now coming back into the building, that's going to require possibly a little bit more time just to make sure that we can reconfigure a classroom to maintain safety. But we're not talking days and days. We're talking maybe instead of happening that next day, it might be a 24-hour delay just to configure. But that's a campus by campus basis because some of our campuses, the rooms are at capacity, so to speak, and so we would need to find out what is the best position for that child. Do we switch teachers, or is that room able to be reconfigured by taking out a bookcase and putting in a student desk to accommodate that child? But definitely going from face-to-face to virtual is a very, very quick switch.
That's interesting. That's good information for folks. It's a lot to consider, you know. I mean, it sounds like there's a possibility that you could end up with a different teacher than you had when you were virtually learning, correct? I mean, if there's not room in their classroom.
Absolutely, yes.
So let me ask you about, let's see, let me just check and see if anything else here. Is there anything you can think of that you want to share?
I just want to encourage our parents to remember that our teachers, a lot of our teachers are parents too. And so they feel your frustrations. There's just a big learning curve overall for everybody that's involved in education. So that we do appreciate your partnership. We appreciate you learning new technology and supporting your children at home. But we also want to ask you that, you know, just give those words of encouragement to our teachers too, because they are used to one way and they've had to flip the way that they teach overnight and learn some new things. And most educators, if you've ever met them, they're perfectionists and they really, really are invested in your child. And so there are some struggles with them because they get frustrated and so just let them know that you appreciate them. That's something that really, really goes a long way. And it can be a simple phone call, or when you're on the phone with them, tell them how much, you know, thank you. Or shoot them an email, because we are partners in this work. And so as much as we value our parents, we would love you to tell our staff and our teachers how much you appreciate them.
Yes, it's a lot. I mean, they've You're teaching on 2 platforms now, learning how to best practices for virtual learning. So I know it's something else for them. The only other thing I could think of, the state had talked about providing PPE for students, I believe, and teachers. How did that work out? What are they supplying, or what do parents expect their children to have?
So every day a student will receive a mask, and we do have varied sizes. So for our pre-K to 2nd grade, there's a different size mask than for our 3rd through 5th grade and our junior high and high school students. Because it's really important, not that they wear a mask, but they have a mask on properly and it fits well. So the school will provide a mask for every student every single day. In addition to that, teachers and staff will receive masks. Teachers have the face shields that they can wear in addition to a mask. There's also gloves teachers have in their classrooms so that as they transfer papers or materials from the student to grade, that they're able to protect their hands with the gloves. Our self-contained special education classrooms, if they need to assist students with toileting needs, they also are provided with gowns so that we ensure that everybody is really kept safe and healthy.
Are there after-school programs still?
There are after-school programs, and that's a campus-by-campus decision. Our high schools are still moving forward with a lot of their extracurricular programs and their sports programs. However, how those operate is changing. We don't have huge groups of kids standing on the sidelines. For instance, cheerleading teams are limited to 10 girls on the sideline. We're asking them to be spread out. When students are not in play, they're required to still wear their masks. So while we do have extracurricular, we have adapted how we function with our extracurricular activities.
How about football?
Well, you know, it's Texas. We're big on football. Yes, most of our high schools still have their football in play. There is limited seating in the stands for the audience, of course, because we want to maintain 6-foot distance. When the players are not actively participating in the game, they are asked to keep their mask on, and we ask them to spread out on the sidelines rather than standing in the huddles that they're used to.
What else haven't we touched on again since we took our break that people may be interested in? I cannot think of anything.
I think just another big component is that social emotional. That's a concern. You know, our kids have, they don't process information the same. What we can as adults, we can rationalize and we can understand and comprehend. Our children are not equipped with those same processes as they develop in mental health and their social and emotional. So campuses have social and emotional learning time built into that schedule so that we're able to address any of those anxieties, any of those traumatic events that COVID has brought in or just life has brought into our kids. Because one of the biggest things is we have to have kids in a good headspace. They've got to feel safe in order to learn. And that's just how the brain works. If my basic needs are not met, I can't even get to those higher level thinking and those processing skills. So one of the big pushes, even prior to COVID, but even more so now, is that social emotional learning component and making sure that kids have a safe place to share how they're feeling, to process their feelings. Beyond feelings, we talk about things like conflict resolution and peer relationships and peer pressure, but all of that goes into part of our social and emotional curriculum that's really, really critical in this time because the trauma that families have experienced from COVID is real, and we've got to acknowledge that as part of the learning process.
Well, I think that's about all the questions we have right now. I can't think of anything else to talk about, Principal. It's been a great conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for allowing this for our community and our parents to have an opportunity to ask and get their questions answered before we return back to school. I know, speaking as a parent, there are apprehensions and there are fears, and sometimes just knowing what is happening in our schools brings down the anxiety level for both our parents and our staff and our students, and that's what we want so that we can go ahead and continue on with a successful year.
And we want to remind everybody that tomorrow you will be doing this again. Tell us about the times on that.
Yes, the times 8 to 5 tomorrow, 8 to 5. The phone bank will be open for parents to call, English and in Spanish, and we will answer any questions that you still have or may come up after we conclude this broadcast. On Saturday and Sunday, I am told, 8 to 5, Saturday and Sunday, the phone banks will be open.
Well, Principal Edwards, thanks again for your time. Dr. Lathan, too, for hers, and we wish you all the best on Monday.
All right, thank you, Keith. It was a pleasure speaking with you.